Hi, everyone. It's Stephanie with the patient story again. We're joined again by Terri, who is so great and gracious in sharing everything about her story. And Terri, you just got through a very extensive part of your experience, which was getting diagnosed and then all the decisions, as you so aptly put the phrase is, what now, right? When we hear that cancer diagnosis. So we've gone through all that. You've just talked about breaking the news to your family, which has been really hard and continues to be really hard. Um, Now I want to understand the treatment part of it. The original treatment plan, I understand, was surgery, but then that shifted. Can you describe what happened there? And did you undergo different testing and biomarker testing at that time?
Well, initially the plan was to do surgery and remove my whole left lung, uh, and it was called a pneumonectomy. And in the meantime, my tumor samples were sent out for what I now know to be biomarker testing, where they're looking for some sort of genomic mutation marker to see what's going on inside of my body. Um, Based on getting the information back, which took around 2 weeks, the day, I think it was 2 days before I was supposed to go in to have my lung removed, the doctor reached out to me and said, "We're not going to do that. We're going to, instead, you're going to do chemo and we'll see how you respond to chemo. And from the chemo, then we'll probably just remove one lobe of your lung if you respond well to it." Now what I understand what they were looking at, because they show you the report. Well, they don't show you the whole report. They just show you a piece of paper and like something is circled on it. And you're not, like I said, you don't know what you're hoping for. You're hoping there's something, there's not something there. What does it all mean? In my particular case, they were talking about the PDL1 level, which is indicative as to how you're going to be responding to immunotherapy, which was just at that point, this was 4 years ago, just at that point starting to come online. Um, so based on that, they decided I was going to do some chemo. So they calculated out the correct chemo cocktail for me, and I did 3 rounds of chemo. I After the 3 rounds of chemo, I was responding well to it, and we were able to just remove one lobe of my lung, and so we removed the lower left lobe of my lung.
Okay, so the chemo was effective. Do you remember what that chemo cocktail was? And if you could describe, was it inpatient, outpatient, how long the infusions were, and was it all IV?
Yeah, I went in and I had a port put in, which they kind of like put up here, and they didn't let me pick where the port went. I I was none too. I had kind of mentally and emotionally prepared to have my whole lung removed. Had gone through all the testing around it because they send you through breathing tests where they put you in kind of like the soundproof booth thing, and then they have you breathing in and out of a tube. Um, and I was kind of mentally and emotionally prepared for that. So when they hit me another direction, it was all over again. It was like I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what to think. I wasn't quite sure, was this good, was this bad? I don't even know what it was. And so it's very stressful. And for anybody to tell you it's not stressful and, well, don't worry, it is what it is, it's no, it's stressful and waiting is hard.
Yeah.
So they were able to decide that that's what we were going to do. And we went in and had I had, let's see, what did I have? I had a lambda and I had cisplatin. And cisplatin is a type of drug, it's platinum based, and it's a kind of an old school cocktail as far as chemo is concerned. But it's also known to kind of cause some hearing problems. And so prior to going in for any sort of chemo, I had to go in and have a hearing test. And yeah, and um, because cisplatin will give you tinnitus, and you can actually get hearing loss from as a result of it. So I did that. Then when I was going in for the chemo, my mom had breast cancer. I mean, my mom went through radiation in the 90s. She went through chemo. She had a mastectomy. I was scared to death. I was scared to I was afraid it was going to hurt. I was afraid what was going to happen. I didn't want to lose my hair. I didn't want, I mean, my youngest was about to graduate from college. Uh, I was really scared. It, I didn't need to be scared.
Mm.
I really shouldn't have been scared. I wish I had reached out to somebody and asked.
Mm.
I wish I had the guts to ask my nurse navigator. I wish I had reached out to somebody who'd been through it in the lung cancer community. I wish I knew where to go to get that information. The chemo, they put the port in. My chemo lasted around 8 hours. I had to do blood tests for a couple of days beforehand, make sure everything, my liver and all these functions were all right. And then they get you all jacked up on some version of steroids. I didn't understand that at the time. And so I had to take, a certain course of certain medication leading up to it. And then they gave me, they clean up the port and then they infuse it. And you're there, I think I was there close to 8 hours every time. And as the biggest fear I think I had was that it was going to hurt going in. And I'm here to tell you, it didn't hurt. I think it was, I sit around, watch TV, and it was playing around in my iPad the whole time. So it was, and it was really quite comfortable. I wasn't even cold. I didn't even do chemo right. I wasn't even cold like in the movies. I was hot.
So, so Terri, it's funny you mentioned that because we our preconceived notions of chemo are what we see in the movies, and I think that's funny. You're like, I'm supposed to be cold. I'm supposed to. These are the things that are happening. They're not. So you were in. Was it a clinic or were you in the hospital for these infusions?
Well, it was a clinic just specific for chemo and infusions, and they didn't do just in chemo infusions. If you were getting like a blood transfusion
Right.
or like maybe iron or different things like that, and so it wasn't just cancer patients.
Right. Right. It was everyone who needed to
It was different people that had different things that were going on.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so, so it was about 8 hours that day of the actual infusion for the two different, for Olympta and cisplatin. And how many, you said you had 3 rounds. So was it one day, and how much time did you have off? And when, in that time, did you feel any other side effects?
Yeah, kept gaining weight. Like I said, I just totally, I did it all wrong. I gained weight. I was hot. My hair didn't fall out. It got thinner. Um, and I kept gaining weight. No, I did. It was about 3 weeks between each cycle. And so it was like I would do like on a Thursday, and then like 3 weeks later I do it again. And I didn't feel lousy at first. I didn't feel lousy until like day 3 or day 4. And that's when I really felt kind of miserable. But it's from the movies. I was completely convinced I was going to be throwing up. I wasn't throwing up. I didn't feel on top of my game. I'm not going to lie. But I, it really wasn't like in the movies.
Right,
And
right.
it wasn't like it hurt going in. Like I was really, really afraid it was going to.
Right, right. So it was more the anxiety that was that was hard to manage.
It is. And I'm not gonna lie, when you feel kind of lousy like that, and then every time you going and doing it again, okay, it gets a little hard. Because you know what's gonna expect. You know what's gonna happen. And you come home and you're flashing this picture here. This was after chemo cycle number 2. Do I even look sick? I mean, I don't, this is not my Julia Roberts moment from like the movies where she's throwing up over the toilet. This is a couple hours after the second chemo I had. My daughter just got a puppy and brought it over for us to take a look at. And, you just don't feel that way. You're all jacked up on the steroids. And so you don't feel that horrible.
Right, right. And the steroids, why you gain weight. I gained weight too on the steroid. I had that same experience. I was like, I'm going to lose a lot of weight, right? Nope. Didn't happen.
No, and you don't lose the weight. And and the funny thing is that, all those things that your mom kind of always told you to do, try and sleep well, drink lots of water and exercise and stuff. Those things are really important to try and do during all this. And even though you may not be running marathons, you can drink water and stay hydrated, and you can try and move around a little bit, because it really does help your body to feel better.
Absolutely, and flush out the toxins as well, right? That's something I wish I had done more of for sure. So Terry, you go through these 3 cycles of the chemo. What happens next? Do they do a scan to see what's going on? I see there's a surgery on the way. Talk about how your oncologist described the plan to you.
Yeah, I responded very well to the chemo. Now their idea of very well doesn't mean they felt like running a marathon, but it does mean that but it was starting to kill the cancer, and so that was good. But the cancer wasn't completely gone. Since I was responsive, we found that out from doing a scan, and based on that, we went in and did just the lobectomy. My youngest one graduated from college, so we kind of delayed things a little bit so that I could attend her graduation, and went in to have that done in May of 2017. And I was in the hospital for around 10 days.
Okay, and before we dive into the lobectomy and the prep and the recovery, I forgot you had been staged 3A and forgot to ask, when did the staging come back for you, and how did that impact the treatment decisions?
Well, initially, when I had that fluid, they were really concerned. The doctors were very concerned that it might be stage 4. And so we had to operate under they were presuming that it was going to be stage 4 until all the tests came back with the biomarker and reading the fluid and whatever magic it is that happens back there. That's when the fluid came back and it wasn't metastatic. That's when they determined that it was stage 3. And I think that factored into it all. But I was just being a good patient and kind of showing up.
Yeah.
Now I can look back. Now, if somebody was to ask me, I'd be like, well, you might want to get a second opinion. You might want to know this question and have this answer. But at the time, I just kept going through.
What are a couple of the questions you think are important that you wish you would have asked at the time? Are there any?
I wish I had actually asked for the full biomarker testing to see what that report was and ask the questions about it. Cancer runs in my family, but I had done genetic testing. I didn't understand this is different testing. This is testing that is based on the genomics, the mutations within the actual pathology of your cancer. It's not necessarily germline, what like you get from your parents, right? From your DNA. There may be some factors that go into that, but that's not what they're looking for. I wish I had that. I also wish I had evaluated a little bit better as far as, I mean, I was very fortunate. I ended up with a great system and a great doctor, but I do wish I had sought like a researcher, somebody from, that was specific to lung, specific to that particular area. Because there's been so many advances in lung cancer, in particular in the last 5 years. It has changed so much, so dramatically, that a lot of doctors are not current on the treatments at all.
Yeah.
I really wish I had done that sooner. And even if we stuck with the same program of attack, I do think it would have given me more confidence that things were going to go along better.
Right.
And the third thing I probably wish I would have done is really not been afraid to ask the questions, right?
Yeah.
Really, really. And if I didn't understand, like pursue it a little bit more, right? And if that means getting involved with the local, with somebody like me, I do phone buddy stuff, or with one of the big lung organizations, or reading and watching these shows. That's really what it takes to kind of get that information.
Okay, no, those are all really good nuggets for people. And we're going to delve into that in our last segment too. So, especially with the whole genetic versus genomic, I mean, I didn't know either, right? I was like, is that interchangeable? No, completely different. So, so thank you for sharing that, Terry. Okay, so the lobectomy. People are a little nervous when they think about these sorts of surgeries, right? Do you remember, could you just sort of describe the prep going into it and what you remember coming out of it and how recovery was?
When you're going into something, and I've already been through the 3 rounds of the chemo, and we hadn't really talked too much about what we were going to do after I did the lobectomy, me with with my medical team. Um, I went into it and I was really kind of excited because it really felt like I was doing something. Like I was physically removing this cancer from my body. And it just really felt like it was the first time I had any sort of power over it, as opposed to just sticking stuff in my body, on a wing and a prayer that was going to work and not knowing what's going on inside of your body except from these scans. It really gave me much more power. As far as the prep going into the lobectomy, it was honestly like everything else. It's the waiting that's just brutal. Because you get yourself so jacked up in your head. What's going to happen? What might happen? What might not happen? What about this? What about that? And, do I have my will done? Do I need my will done? What about healthcare power of attorney? What is a healthcare power of attorney? These are all really important issues. And these are probably things that we should have taken care of way before I got sick. This is just something they should normally take care of as an adult, right? But you don't really think about until you get that, a real serious diagnosis.
Absolutely. And so yeah, it's all the mental stuff you're thinking about. And then you actually go into the surgery. How do you remember how long it was and how you recovered from it? And any guidance again for people who are going to have one themselves?
They have different approaches to how you handle a lobectomy now. Now it's getting a little bit more common to be able to do what they call wedge resection, or just kind of go in and just take out a piece of it or a portion of it. Okay. So not any two are really comparable. In my particular case, they had to go in and like cut me in as like this. I really like, I don't want to say an L because I don't like the way that sounds. So we're going to call it a V. Okay. We're going to call it a V across my shoulder blade. So they could kind of go in and I could get victory over that cancer. And so they went and they cut that out, and then they took out a hunk of me. And that hunk included the cancer. I was in the hospital for around 10 days, and I woke up and I wasn't mentally prepared for like the tubes coming out of me. Um, they didn't really hurt, but it was just I was surprised because it just didn't cross my mind to ask the question as to like, what am I going to wake up with? Right. I mean, I just didn't know. I knew I'd be in the hospital for around a week. And what was the recovery like? You're laying in the hospital, eating their food, watching their television,
Mm.
and the only time that they have anything for you is in the middle of the night when you're trying to get some sleep. I mean, every ever hospital it's just like that.
That's right. Get prepared for the midnight wake ups, and right when you fall asleep, nope, it's time to check you again. Um, thank you
For
for
real.
thank you for sharing that. So after the lobectomy, and how long did it take to recover at home? By the way, to feel like you were back close to 100%.
It's really funny is that all the wonderful people that I have in my life, my Bible study ladies and my friends and my family and the neighbors and people my husband work with, were all trying to be very helpful. And the insurance company was reaching out to me. And somehow it really became overwhelming. It felt like I needed a secretary to take care of all of it. And it reached the point where I had to say thank you and then just not respond so that I could recover. Because otherwise, it felt like I just kept saying the same thing over and over and over again. And so that is kind of something to be warned about, right? That as much as they love you, take your space so that you can recover. Because I found that when I was just laying on the couch or I was laying in bed and I was at home and I was recovering, watching TV, zoning in and zoning out, as you kind of do when you're not feeling that great, it made me feel better.
Yeah.
As far as like things that I had to do, I had this little breathing apparatus. I had, I can't remember, this barometer or something. Yeah, you have to blow this little ball in there, okay, to kind of fill up your lungs. And at first it was uncomfortable, but the more that I did it, it felt like I needed it. It
Mm,
felt like a good burn, a good exercise, kind of like when you get that good stretch. It was like it really felt like it was starting to really stretch well.
okay.
That was helpful. And as the more I just started kind of moving around, like I said, this wasn't exercising. This was just kind of moving, just some days the big, it was big exciting day because I took a shower, so you're not feeling fabulous,
Right.
but at the same time you need to be able to move around and
Yes,
just do a little bit at a time
right.
and do a little bit more the next day. And if you're not feeling so great, just dial it down a notch.
That's right. Small steps, really important not to try and go for the big win, right? Okay, so wow, so you're recovering at home. I see you go through chemo one more time. Was that part of the plan?
It was, well, she says it was part of the plan, and my husband said it was a part of the plan, but this is part of the plan that apparently I wasn't listening to. So let that be the lesson, right? You need to take notes.
Yeah. And have other people there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
Right, right.
Was
But I guess it was part of the plan, so they tell me. And as a result of doing the fourth round of chemo, and it was the same chemo cocktail, now you're more worn down from having the lobectomy. Now I was more worn down from having the lobectomy, and then I did the chemo, so that was a little bit harder than it had been previously. But I did a scan following that, and I had resulted so well. I had done so well that they decided that we could take the port out. And
amazing.
so I could physically go in and actually did it over the 4th of July weekend
Wow.
because I felt like it was literally independence. And when they said I could get it out, it was like, let's just do this now. I didn't want them to change their mind. So
Yeah.
let's get the port out and just make this go away.
Amazing, Terry. And I see that July, then it's official, no evidence of disease, and that lasted for 18 months. And during that time, you're going for scans every 3 months, right?
Right. I'm getting scanned every 3 months and talking to my doctor regularly. And when you're going through initially, it seems like you're at the doctor's 3, 4 times a week. And sometimes you're like getting two doctors in one day just because of the schedule and getting a hearing test every time before you get the chemo and all this stuff. And when you get back to the point where it's like, okay, well, we'll see you in 3 months, it's like, well, wait a minute. I've been here all this time. What am I going to do with my schedule now? And it was a little sense of abandonment,
Yeah.
okay? Because it's like, well, you mean they're like, yeah, okay, we'll see you in 3 months. And so that's the time you have to start being more intentional and start kind of taking little pieces of your life back as far as like, whatever your exercise program looks like,
Right.
whatever your normal life looks like.
Right. I love that you brought that up because it's the drop off in care that people don't expect. And you're like, wait a minute, there was this like very regimented schedule and I had things to do. And then, yeah, what's going on? So thank you for bringing that up so people can understand there is a lot of processing, I think, that goes on in that time. Um, and so I know that you had three recurrences that you had to deal with. And so so spoiler alert, the third time
Spoiler alert, I didn't do it right the first time.
it was is 18 months. And then what happened? How did you know something was wrong? And
Well,
yeah.
I just went in for my scans like a good patient. Every 3 months, I went in for my scan. And for my scan, okay, this is a CT scan where they do a contrast. And so they like similar to what they did with for the diagnostic, where they put an IV push in. You have to drink and you have to drink this stuff to make sure everything's okay in your abdomen. Um, that's what I still right now I'm doing it every 3 months. So that's what you're going in and you're having done. And from one of my regular scans, that's when we saw that there was something. And my doctor called to let me know that there was something. And
Ugh,
the first, nobody wants to hear a recurrence.
right.
Nobody wants to think about it because I wanted to be, like I said, we cut this out. I wanted to be done. This was it. I was done. I was ready to move on with my life. And every part of me wanted to just shut the door and just move forward. That's not what was in the plan, I guess.
Right.
And so the first recurrence, in some ways, I kind of felt like I let my family down.
Mm,
And I felt like it was really hard to tell everybody because I felt like I did something wrong.
Mm,
And, that's kind of like one of the things that kind of goes on behind like scenes behind the heart in, a cancer patient or anybody with any sort of like issue, right? Is that you want to perform and you want to do the right thing. And I want to be a good patient, and good patients do this. I mean, I've watched the movies, they
yeah,
get healthy, right?
right.
And so I wanted to do that and I didn't. So telling them was hard. And how do you tell them, and how do you tell them right? Let me know when you figure it out,
Right,
because it's just hard. It's,
right. You just do the best you can, right? I mean, there's no perfect response, and it's I'm sure it was so frustrating because you've done everything you were told to do, and you've been like you said, a good patient, and yet, your body seems like it's not cooperating here. And so I read you sent me the timeline of is a microwave ablation. Can you describe what that means and how that procedure was?
I had never heard of it before.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have this recurrence. My doctor tells me about it. I'm like, okay, well, what's the plan? Well, now, I mean, I'm 2 years into the journey, so I have a lot more knowledge. Okay, I've reached out, I've connected with people, so I have a little bit better handle on what's going on. And she was saying, well, I think what we may have to do is we have to do radiation. Well, the radiologist said that took a look at it and said that they would have an interventional radiologist, which is a specialty in it, be able to do what they call an ablation. Now, this is my non-science explanation, but the way I understand it is they stick kind of like a little probe inside of you. Kind of, I picture like a really skinny little soldering iron, and they burn this out of you. Now, they don't burn it at like thousands of degrees. It's only like 110 degrees because your body's like only 98, right? So they burned it at that, and sometimes they freeze it out. And so I was kind of quasi awake, in that little cocktaily state, in a CT scan, so that they could see exactly where it was. And like I might have to hold my breath or move this way or that way. And they went in and they were able to ablate it and burn it all out. And so we blew that up, got rid of that.
Mhm.
And after they took a couple of samples of it so they could send it away for another biomarker testing. Because that's what's really important, is sometimes this cancer changes. And so every time that we have the opportunity to go in and see what it is, we will see what it is. And most of the time, the insurance should cover it. And if they don't cover it, you generally can reach out to one of the lung cancer organizations, and they can help you figure out a way that it can become covered.
Okay. Yeah. Just advocate, right? Because if you don't, right. No, that's great advice. And so after the ablation, you were fine for 4 months. Well, did you have any side effects from it, or was it?
I mean, well, honestly, I've had worse PMS cramps through the years, right? Okay. I mean, I was kind of lousy for about a day or two, but I even went to church the next day.
Oh,
So it wasn't, they watched me in the hospital overnight just as a safety precaution. And then I just, that was it. It was fine. And I continued doing the scans every 3 months.
right.
And 3 months, I don't even know, it's 3 to 5 months later, I had another recurrence.
Gosh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, I'm reading here. It says NED 4 months, um,
Yeah.
and then a recurrence number two. How did you walk us through? Just, I mean, you've already gotten that bad news once and then twice, and this is really the third time you're hearing another diagnosis, essentially. Walk us through that moment and how your oncologist said, okay, well, here's the next plan.
It becomes just such a blur because, it's like I didn't feel like, I had recovered from the last one, and it was back at it again. And honestly, for me, I just feel like I was a disappointment. I've always been a good student. I've always been a good patient. I do what I'm supposed to do. I stopped being, I tried to stop doing stupid things. And so I was kind of disappointed in myself again. But it's like, okay, well, we've got what we got. We got to move forward with it, right? And so you can't fix it if you don't know it's there. So first find it. Now let's do something about it. But
Right.
I know what it's like to go through the other end of it, and I know how hard it can be later on. So I'm better off staying in front of it and just moving forward with it. So
Absolutely.
the doctor, we went through and we did, from based on the scans and based on the information, they determined that the best approach was to do radiation, and I did 15 rounds of radiation.
And Terry, can you describe the SBRT? What kind of radiation it is, but really less the medical stuff and more of for someone who's going to undergo it too. What does that mean?
Well, again, I'm picturing what the radiation is that my mom went through. This was not my mom's radiation from the 90s. Okay. I wasn't all burnt up. I wasn't all fried. This was not like that at all. Um, it wasn't bad like that at all. The worst part of it was you go in, it is first of all, you get the recurrence. Now I have to go in and I have to go lay in the radiation table and lay still, which is not something I do very well from, you can tell that from watching me on camera. Is have to lay still for an extended period of time. And they're marking and they're taking scans of me to see exactly where it is that they need to line up their radiation equipment so that they can hit it. That took like a good hour. It was not easy to sit still, not easy at all. And then, but when I actually went in for the radiation a couple weeks later, they go back, they do their mathematical calculations, which I guess they have a whole department of people to do that have a pay grade way above mine. And they go in and they determine exactly what they need to do. And so that you lay back in the same place again. And then my radiation, like I said, it was SBRT and it was super short. I don't think I drove up there, I laid down on the table, I was in there for like maybe 5 minutes, and then I was done. I was out the door. And
Wow.
as long as I wore like a yoga top or sports bra and stuff, I mean, it was like no big deal.
Okay, so that's good advice. Just wear a particular kind of clothing that makes it easy
For
to.
sure. And honestly, if you know, stay away from anything metal. Stay away from your underwires. Stay away from any crafts like that. If I was wearing like yoga pants and a yoga top, like with nothing metal, nothing on it at all, most of the time, I don't say always, but most of the time, I could keep my clothes on.
Wow.
And that made me feel more, more human, less devalued. It really made me feel like much more empowered.
You said it made you feel more what? It kind of cut out there.
Empowered.
Empowered. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
much less vulnerable. I mean, if you take your clothes off and lay still with a
Right.
sheet, that's a really vulnerable feeling, regardless, right?
That's true.
We've all been through it to some degree.
Yes.
But so whenever I can, that's what I wear, and I kind of have like my kind of like exercise workout clothes that I wear
Right.
for that, and there it's really very beneficial.
I love that because not only is it practical, but the human element of it, right? You get to retain this sort of, you don't have to feel as vulnerable to your point and compromised. So you go through 15 rounds of that. Was that, I'm sorry if I missed it, was it every day? It was like Monday through Friday?
No, I was
Okay.
3 times a week for 5 weeks,
Okay.
which is it was kind of like, it would destroy my whole afternoon. I would kind of come home because I mean, it's still 30, 45 minutes up there. You park, you get in, you got to check in, you do your thing. I mean, the actual part of the radiation is super fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Way longer to drive up there, park, get in, check in, all that, and then come back out and drive back home. And then, you're trying to work it so that you're not driving in rush hour traffic and
Right,
all that other
right.
nonsense, right?
So
And
from
so it's like that. Mhm.
the moment that you get to the, besides the parking lot, the moment you actually get into the radiation center and the moment you leave, how long was it typically?
Probably, most of the time, I mean, I didn't have to wait very long, just a couple of minutes. And because I just had those yoga tops on and stuff like that, I pretty much should just kind of go in there, just lay on the table, and I would probably be in and out at 10 minutes at the absolute outside.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's a great
That's
picture.
really, really fast.
Yes, that's really fast. And okay, so you're done with the 15 sessions of radiation. You weren't all burned up, so you didn't really feel any side effects then. It was just.
I mean, I just feel kind of achy as it kind of wore on. Because they warned me, based on it depends on where it is within your body as to if you may have some sort of bowel problems or stomach problems or this thing or that thing or whatever. Um, I didn't really have any particular problems. I kind of come home some days a little bit more tired and not fatigued like I was during chemo,
Right.
but worn out, you know. And how much of that was the annoyance of doing it, and how much of it was physically, or just like, you know, you feel like they're kind of sucking you. I just kind of got used to having a life, and then with recurrences,
Right.
they take your life away. So it's just it's just they just teased you enough.
Yeah, yeah. It's just this disruption that you're constantly and you're trying to get on with your life. And I know you were NED, no evidence of disease for a year at that point, and then boom, third recurrence.
Yeah.
When was the news of the third recurrence?
Well, I found out, let's see, when was that? It was in 20, I'm so confused with
I
the
know,
years. I'm
I
sorry, right?
know it's COVID.
Um,
Okay. We'll put it
yeah,
in your timeline, but you were NED for a year, and so that might have been, you might have had it
like 2019, does that sound right?
well, 2019, I think
2020. It would
2020
have been
was the
2020.
third
Yeah.
recurrence. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been 20 and 20. Okay, and so yeah, so in 2020, and yeah, so I had a recurrence, and we had to go through same sort of thing. It'd been around a year, and had to go through another 15 rounds of radiation,
Yeah,
and just kind of went through that and just skated through my normal life,
right.
because other than the inconvenience of the scheduling and whatever, you know, I kind of knew what to expect,
Yes.
knew how to kind of negotiate it through my calendar, right,
Mhm.
in my life.
I mean, yeah, you had the experience certainly of navigating it before. And I know, thankfully, no evidence of disease at last check, right? Which is wonderful. Terry, my last question before we go into this last section is just how do you, I mean, three recurrences, and how do you like think about moving forward, right? I mean, like it sounds for someone like me who, I went through treatment and then I haven't had a recurrence. So how do you, I think it's a psychological game probably, I'd imagine more than anything. How do you do it? And what's your guidance for people who are dealing with recurrences themselves?
Right? It's like anything else. You do what you got to do, right? Um, to me, I've just taken the attitude that whenever I go in, and that's where this anxiety hits, okay? And this anxiety is this anxiety that surrounds the scan that you're going to go in and you're going to have a recurrence. And I get my scans every 3 months, and I try to kind of like keep myself really, really busy, really busy, so that I can sleep really well. Um, I get a little snippier than usual. And but I might indulge in a little bit more chocolate, or like, you know, some of the other things I normally would not be so inclined to do, because I just kind of need a little bit of extra TLC. So, and I keep telling myself that if it's there, it's there. It's a matter of I'm just going to know it is.
Right,
Right, because that's, I mean, that's the whole thing about lung cancer, or about any cancer, right? It's growing and it's hiding inside of you and you don't know it's happening.
right.
This gives me the upper hand. And
Yes.
so I have to take it and look at it as an empowering moment, and
Yeah.
keep telling myself that. And it's hard, but you do what you got to do. And, you know, I have kids that are happy that I am.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that. Actually, because I was going to save this for this last segment, but we're on the topic. And so, some people have described it as managing cancer more like an ongoing, illness or a chronic disease, as opposed to the, cancer, you treat it, it's gone, or you treat, So any last words about how you're able to do, because I know you still do the 3 months, you do the scan. So you're still living your life with these 3 month sort of intervals in between. Any last, yeah, guidance on how you manage that? Because you've been doing it.
Well, and I will be doing it. I will be doing it, because there's a reason that we don't really call it remission. We don't call it cured. We call it no evidence of disease. And even though we're looking at, again, I know people that have been doing this for 15 years or more, and they're still getting scanned. They may not be getting scanned every 3 months. It may only be 1 year, but they're still doing it. And I will go, at one point, I'll go from 3 months to 6 months. And then from 6 months, it'll probably go to about 9. And then from 9 months to about a year. And I think with a cancer diagnosis, it's like anything else that happens in your life. The diagnosis isn't going to go away. You're just always going to have it. And you always just need to be very vigilant about taking care of it and being intentional about getting scanned.
Right. And I love that you set this up as an empowering sort of, paradigm for yourself. You're on top of it. And, you know, that's what you've had to do and that's what you continue to do. And I think that's a very encouraging message. So stick around with us. Terry's going to go over her advocacy work, which is really important because there's a lot of exciting things happening in lung cancer and KRAS specifically. So hang tight.